Education Outreach and Diversity Officer at the Royal Astronomical Society, and today I'll be talking to you about using space as a context in the classroom for your teaching. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know we are living through exceptional circumstances and everyone should applaud the work that teachers are doing. And I know you're very, very busy, particularly at the moment. And even though it's half term, I'm sure you're all working anyway. So thank you so much for joining me today. I will share the PowerPoint with you all at the end, so you don't need to kind of take notes. You can sit back and enjoy. You can chat to the other participants and you can ask questions via the Zoom webinar chat and the question and answer option using Zoom. And if there's any problems at any point, please do get in touch with me somehow, either email or something like that, so that I can point you in the direction of how to fix a problem or the recording at a later date. So the first thing I'm going to do with you is share my screen and we will get off. So this session should last about an hour. So I'll go through all the information. Please do ask questions during the session or at the end. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat and on the question functions, and hopefully there's a bit of time at the end if there are any more questions as well. Okay, so this is the Using Space as a Context in Your Classroom session, run by the Royal Astronomical Society, but actually organised by ESERO UK, which is part of ESA and the UK Space Agency. And my name's Sheila, so I'm the Education Outreach and Diversity Officer at the Royal Astronomical Society. For those of you that haven't heard of the Royal Astronomical Society before, it's a learned society. It's 200 years old this year, so it was formed in 1820. And the offices are in central London. Obviously, they're closed at the moment, but when they are open, we do host sessions like this in the office. And then there's an opportunity to have a look at our wonderful library, which is the second largest astronomical library in the UK and has books by Galileo and Newton and other amazing scientists, and artifacts such as a piece of the apple tree under which it is presumed Isaac Newton sat when he thought about gravity. As a learned society, we represent astronomers and geophysicists and people working in the space industry nationally and internationally. We have just over 4,000 members, and we're a sort of council and president-led organisation. And our first president was William Herschel. His picture is on the bottom left of that screen. William Herschel was a notable astronomer who discovered Uranus and worked very closely with his also famous sister Caroline Herschel to do lots of incredible astronomy. And on the right hand side of William Herschel is Professor John Zarnecki, who is a previous president, not from 200 years ago, but a previous president of the RAS. And the reason I often start any presentation by showing these two guys side by side is because you can see that in the last 200 years, the sort of face of astronomy hasn't really changed that much. And part of the work that I do at the RAS is to try and diversify or try and advertise that astronomers aren't of one type of person and that anyone can be an astronomer. And that is part of what I do at the RAS. Now, my background is I have a PhD in planetary science. I did my GTP training course and got my NQT and worked in a secondary school comprehensive in Preston, and taught science up to GCSE level and a bit of A-level level science there as well. And I've been teaching GCSE astronomy for the last 5-6 years. This year's cohort has stopped and they've been given predicted grades, but we'll hope to start again next year. And the purpose of the RAS is organising meetings, publishing journals and research, education through grants and outreach activities. Our library collection is quite large, and we are there to represent astronomy, geophysics and other related forms of of space science through the work we do nationally and internationally. And in terms of education and outreach at the RAS, we have a suite of resources on our website, which is ras.ac.uk. We have more and more online resources on our YouTube channel. If you just search for Royal Astronomical Society, we've got quite a active social media network. We run a GCSE teachers astronomy teachers forum with Edexcel, so if anybody wants to be signed up to that. And we do all kinds of things for teachers, and having a teaching background has really made what I do a lot more accessible, because I feel like I understand what teachers want. We also do quite a lot of careers work. We go into schools and we talk about careers in the space industry, but also concentrate on transferable skills that you might get by studying physics, astronomy and geophysics. And we don't just talk about research and being in academia, but also other jobs that are available in the space industry, of which there are many, many, many. And then this is the GCSE Astronomy class that I have just been teaching, this cohort that's just finished. And this was a Christmas pizza party, and stereotypically they asked to watch Big Bang Theory while we ate our pizzas. But it was a great cohort. We had about 16. We taught it as an after-school additional GCSE. They were years 9 and 10 when they started. They were years 10 and 11 when they finished. We did an hour a week for 2 years. So if you've got any questions about GCSE astronomy as well, feel free to ask me. I know most of the things that I'm advertising now are out of date, but it's to flag the fact that we run them. And obviously most of the things that we have or we plan to organise this year have been postponed or cancelled. But just in terms of flagging things, every year we run, apart from this year, we run an astronomical conference called NAM, which is the National Astronomy Meeting. Last year it was in Lancaster. This year it was supposed to be in Bath, but it will be in Bath in July 2021. And as part of that, we always have an outreach and education day. So we advertise this to academics, but also to teachers and educators who are interested in learning more about space and astronomy and connecting with researchers and forming those sorts of networks. So if you ever wanted an academic to come and talk to your students about space or run a workshop or something like that, then these kinds of conferences are quite useful for that type of thing, and they are often funded by organisations like the Ogden Trust or ESERO UK as well. And every year, normally, we also run an outreach and education training day. Last year, it was at Life Science Centre in Newcastle. So we try not to be too London-centred as well. We probably won't be running that, at least in person this year, but we will pick it up again in 2021 or take it online if that ends up being appropriate. In terms of what we can offer you at the RAS, we do these teacher CPDs. When movement is allowed, we can visit your school. I'm based in the Northwest in Lancashire. My colleague is based in Oxford and London, so we kind of can cover quite a wide area, but we can also connect you with our members, with our fellows who can visit in your area and come to your schools. We also offer visits to the RAS if you're London based. And during those sessions, we run workshops and training on all sorts of different topics. So we can have library sessions, we can talk about Mars, we can have visits with actors playing notable characters from the past. For example, the last man on the moon, Gene Cernan. The venue can also be used for training, educational programs, workshops, training, public lectures. We can act as a broker between you and our members who are national and international. And we're always here for advice and contacts. So please do stay in touch with me after this session. And I would always be happy to answer any questions or help you get in touch with anyone sort of, I can't say anyone in the space industry, but anyone who works within within the remit that we work with as well. The other thing we can offer for teachers and educators are some grants and funding, up to £5,000 twice per year for educational events or programmes. And we have 2 medals. One is the Annie Maunder Medal for outstanding contribution to outreach and public engagement in space. The deadline for that is the last Friday in September. And the Patrick Moore Medal is awarded to a noteworthy teacher in primary or secondary level who has contributed to astronomy or geophysics as well. And this is a picture of Jenny Lister, who's a primary school teacher in London, and she won the award a few years ago. She actually came to our conference to pick up her award, and she got to meet the president then, John Zarnecki, and also comedian John Colshaw, who is a massive fan of space and a fellow of the Astronomical Society. So do think about self-nominating or nominating someone for those awards. They're really fantastic. So working with ESERO, ESERO is the European Space Education Resource Office, so sort of like the education arm of ESA, and based in the UK, but there are lots of ESEROs across Europe. And ESERO works very closely with STEM learning in terms of enhancing school pupils' school environments, but using space as the hook, because space is exciting and does infuse young people into all kinds of subjects, not just STEM subjects. But unfortunately, there's not that much space on the general curriculum, as you are all aware. So ESERO feeds into UK Space Agency, ESA, and then all of the STEM learning networks, so STEM ambassadors, Space Education Quality Mark, STEM clubs, and all of that kind of thing as well. Now, we are in a really fortunate place in the UK that actually space is a fantastic area for our young people to go into. The UK government have put lots of money into careers advice and jobs in the space industry. There is a thriving space industry in the UK, even though it's not very well advertised, mostly in terms of satellite applications and engineering, aerospace engineering jobs within the UK. But by 2030, we do believe that there will be many more jobs in the industry, as it is a growing area in the UK. And like I said, the government is investing quite heavily in the UK Space Agency and space education, and has been interested in it in the last few years, which is good to know, because for young people, often they enjoy science, but they don't know what jobs are out there, and they don't pick those topics because they can't see the vocation at the end. But knowing that there are space industry jobs in the UK, so that they don't have to leave the UK if they are interested in space, is a really important thing to share. And we do highlight that in our careers booklet as well. If you do want a copy of our careers booklet, the PDF is on our website. And when the office is open again, we can send you physical copies to hand out if you have careers fairs or classes with your young people as well. So why space exploration? Well, there's lots and lots and lots of reasons. And I'm a complete convert, so I'm blinded by how much I love space. But if you have skeptical young people, one of the things you can talk to them about is space spin-off technology, and the innovation that comes from the space industry in terms of workforce, technological development and workforce. But it's also culture and inspiration. You know, where do we come from? How has the Earth evolved to have people on it? It's a very collaborative industry to work in. It is a global issue when we're talking about things like climate change and protecting the Earth and planetary protection. So there's lots of things that excite us about space, and we can use that to encourage young people into STEM careers, just because it's so fantastic. So for example, you could start off by saying to your students, what is the connection between moon boots and trainers, the moon and a joystick, a robotic arm in space and a hospital, an astronaut and a firefighter, and an ear thermometer and a star. And what hopefully they'd realise is that the connection between those technologies is that most of those technologies were created for the space industry and then have been adapted for the UK. Oh, sorry, I've just seen a question. In terms of costs, when we are running anything space related with the RAS or with ESERO, we can offer those for free. Normally, if we're coming into your school, we might ask for a couple of resources, maybe some paper, sellotape, that kind of thing. But otherwise it's completely free. If you're coming to us in London, you have to organise your travel and transport, but the actual rate for the workshops and the sessions is completely free. So we wanted to make it as accessible as possible, and as long as everything we do is space related, then we are able to offer that to you completely for free. So there we go. So yeah, the space spin-off answers. Trainers, the design of trainers, the shock absorbers was originally designed for moon boots. Joysticks are used to steer objects like the Apollo lunar rovers around the moon. The robotic arms used on the International Space Station have been adapted to be used on surgery, carry out surgery on patients. The materials used for firefighters were originally developed to protect astronauts in terms of their spacesuits. And ear thermometers have a lens with an infrared sensor in them to detect heat. And this is exactly how we detect the birth of stars. We use infrared and we detect heat. So those are some of the sort of more relatable things for young people as to why the space industry is useful to us. Because I know young people often say, oh gosh, it's such a lot of money, we should spend the money here on Earth and all of that kind of thing. But actually the space industry has given us a lot more than just looking up and astronauts. And then, of course, we've had Helen Sharman and we've had the sort of Tim Peake effect in the last few years, where there's been British astronauts, Helen Sharman and Tim Peake, and that has enthused young people a lot more in terms of working in the space industry as well, and that's fantastic. And there are a whole suite of resources based on the Principia mission, which was Tim Peake's mission when he went up in 2015, based on Isaac Newton's book Principia Bay, which was all about sort of the mathematics of gravity and having things in space, of which we do have a copy at the RAS. We have a first edition, which is quite a sight to behold. So when the building is open again, you know, maybe we can organise a visit to see that book. And then there's lots of education and outreach opportunities around Tim Peake, around space, the European Space Agency and the UK Space Agency and missions, and linking that to satellite missions, engineering, astronomy and real life scientists in the UK, of which there are many. We're really lucky that the space industry is thriving in the UK. It's just not very well advertised. So, for example, these are just some of the missions, European Space Agency missions, that UK scientists are involved with. Bepi Colombo is on its way to Mercury at the moment. ExoMars is being built as we speak, and unfortunately postponed, but you know, that is such that is the life with space missions, and different universities are involved in different missions and different organisations as well. So, for example, Bepi Colombo has got a huge contingent from Leicester University, ExoMars, UCL, and the Mullard Space Science Laboratory, etc., etc. So you can kind of link young people to missions that they're interested in, but also link them to scientists that they're interested that they might be interested in working with, and then link them to universities as well. So if they're struggling with their university choices, but they really like the idea of working on a Mars mission in the future, then UCL would be a good idea, a good place for them to go and visit. And it sort of propagates from there. So some of the things that you can do in primary and secondary schools in terms of space and space education. First of all is the Space Education Quality Mark, which is a piece of coursework or sort of evidence for your for using space in your teaching. There are 3 levels of award: bronze, silver and gold. You submit your resources and evidence online, and then we mark it, and you can get an award, gold, bronze, silver or gold. It's completely free to enter, but I think it costs £100 to get the plaque to put in your school. And it's just like all the other education quality marks, but this one is around space. So I've had another question. In the past, the British government had an opt-out for human space travel, so there were no British astronauts. Will this happen post-Brexit? Well, the European Space Agency has said that even though the UK will not be part of Europe post-Brexit, we can still be part of the European Space Agency. And Tim Peake, who is the first sort of paid British astronaut, has travelled via the European Space Agency and the UK Space Agency. So there will still be British astronauts post-Brexit. We shouldn't be affected in that sense. But thank you for that question. It's always relevant, unfortunately, at the moment. And of course, they might change their mind, but this is what they're saying at the moment, so that's good. So yeah, the Space Education Quality Mark is something that you can do relatively easy. A few photographs, a couple of paragraphs online, and build up a portfolio of evidence of using space in your schools, and that can give you your Space Education Quality Mark. Okay. So if you do want to ask questions, do remember to type them into the chat or into the Q&A function, and I will try and answer them as I go. Okay, right. So the next section is I'm going to go quite quickly through all the resources that are available by ESERO and other organisations that are space related. Most of them, if not all of them, are available online at the STEM learning website, so stem.org.uk/ESERO/resources. I can also, once this is over, get physical copies sent to you if you prefer to use physical copies. There are so many resources spanning STEM clubs, primary, secondary, science, geography, DT, computing, art, chemistry, pretty much everything. So do have a look at the website, play around. You have to sign in, you have to register, but it's free. And I'm just going to go through a couple of the interesting ones now. So most of them were created, or many of them were created for primary school projects to do with Tim Peake in the last few years, but they have been adapted for secondary school and for other topics. So we're trying to stay topical and pick future missions that the UK are involved in, or if there's a solar eclipse or something like that. There's all sorts of things. And in terms of evidence, using these resources have shown enjoyment and engagement, confidence for the students, but also for the teachers, for which space is not their specialist subject. There was some evidence of pupil attainment in science going up, and knowledge of career opportunities as well. And if you want to look at the data, that is online as well. So there's all sorts of resources. There's Mission X Train Like an Astronaut. There's a Great British Space Dinner. There's Space Case, there's Mission Starlight. And like I said, they are all online. I know STEM Learning were updating their website, or using this time to update their website. So it might not look like that, but if you go to stem.org.uk, you will be able to find all the resources there. So for example, the Is There Anyone Out There resource is for 9 to 12-year-olds, so crossing higher primary and lower secondary. It's based on looking for life outside of the Earth and focusing on Mars. There's lots of different lesson plans and experiments in there covering science and maths, literacy, IT and geography, and that's quite fun. Most of these resources are written for and by teachers, so are broken down into lesson plans and resources and further reading and that kind of thing, which makes it more useful. The Rosetta Chasing a Comet is a primary resource based on the Rosetta mission from 2014, which went to a comet. And again, there's lots of fun activities and experiments that you could do using materials that you would hopefully have in schools as well. Again, we're not trying to ask you to buy lots of new things because we're aware of the funding situation in schools as well. Mission X Train Like an Astronaut is one of my favourite things to do when I go into primary schools particularly. It's based around physical education, so PE and science, and using the inspiration of astronaut and cosmonaut training to increase the awareness in young people of health and physical fitness, but also science and teamwork as well. It is run as a competition every year, but you can just use the resources in your class as a one-off. You don't have to do the competition, but if you do log your class in and log all the points that you're doing, you can get points, and there's a leaderboard. And the UK is now one of the largest players in the world. I think it makes it more fun doing it as a competition, but there's no need to. And most of the time, because I go into lots of different schools, I don't run it as a competition, I run it as one-offs. The Great British Space Dinner was based on a TV programme where Tim Peake and Heston Blumenthal created Tim Peake's favourite meals, but for space. For the space environment. So they did a bacon sandwich because you're not allowed to use bread in space because of the crumbs. So how do you make a bacon sandwich? And they did a cream tea and, you know, all kinds of stuff. But again, it's all to do with nutrition and the healthy eating and how would you create your own space dinner. And even though the program was a few years ago, all the resources are still available. Rocket science was based on horticulture and gardening and geography. So they sent a big packet of rocket seeds into space, and then when the seeds came back down again with an astronaut, they were set into little packets and sent into schools to see if schools could grow rocket, as in like the lettuce stuff, to see if they could grow after they'd been up into space. So that side of the resource is done, but again, the resources are still there. It's led by RHS campaign for school gardening. So if you have a school garden, it's a nice thing to think about. You know, how would you grow food in space, and where would you get the soil from, and how does gravity or the lack of gravity affect growing plants and food in space. And then there's the ISS Education Kit for younger primary, talking about the International Space Station. You can like design an astronaut spacesuit. What's it like living on the International Space Station? Where do they sleep? How do they use the toilet? And those kinds of considerations. And then we have things for older people, older young people. For example, the Look to the Future resource is to do with space careers, and do link into people like Tim Peake, but don't just concentrate on being an astronaut, because that's not it's not just about being an astronaut, of course. Mission Starlight is a chemistry experiment looking at the different materials used to design spacesuits and thinking about protection from ultraviolet light. So the resources include UV beads and different filters of different pieces of paper of different colours, so sort of filters. And then you need to provide sun cream, and you shine a UV light onto the different materials and see how they react to UV light. And then you can smother them in sun cream and see that they don't react in the same way, because the sun cream does protect you from a certain amount of UV light. So it's bringing in chemistry, it's also space, but it's relatable to young people. Why do we have to wear sun cream? Thinking about the rays from the harmful radiation from the sun, and our day-to-day life and how that relates as well. And then EO Detective, Earth Observation Detective, is a geography project, but also supports maths and computing. And it's using archives of photographs taken by astronauts over the last 50 years, working with NERC and NCEO. And what you can do is look at how different parts of the Earth have changed over the last 50 years. And you can talk about geography and erosion and climate change and you know, the melting of ice caps and all of that kind of stuff. And it's a really unique perspective on looking down at the Earth from a space point of view, which is nice, because I think when we talk about astronomy and space, we often think about looking out, but we don't often think about looking back. And of course, space, Earth is part of space, so and a very important part of space at that. And then there's lots of fun things as well. For example, the TIM Augmented Reality app, where you can download an app onto your phone or iPad, and what you get if you hold your iPad onto a class desk, a little Tim Peake pops up, and he can like walk around on your desk and give you a thumbs up and stuff like that, which is just a nice bit of fun, a bit of fun there. And then ESERO do, in normal times, have all kinds of online and physical webinars and training that you can attend. So again, just for information that these exist rather than actually advertising things that have gone in the past. Whenever there's a UK space conference, which is every other year, so it was 2019, so will hopefully be 2021 unless things have been postponed. ESERO also try and run a primary and a secondary conference at the same time. So last year it was in Wales, in Newport. So the space conference is a huge space industry conference with thousands of participants and a massive exhibition floor. And ESERO take over one of the rooms for a parallel session for primary and secondary educators, but then because you're at the space conference, you can also visit the exhibition floor and meet astronauts and all kinds of stuff. So next year, when the UK Space Conference is organised, do have a think and try and remember that the primary and secondary conferences should be happening at the same time, and they're really, really good events. And everyone met Tim Peake last year, and I was really annoyed because I was not there, so I still haven't met him, even though I've been in the same room with him a million times. And there's also all kinds of online courses and webinars, so exploring space, humans in space, and these are still accessible at the moment, of course, because they're online. And the other space champions, so I work with ESERO as I'm called a space champion, and there's 9 of us in the UK, and we all champion space as part of our day jobs whilst working for other organisations. So the other space champions are also doing online things. Do have a look at the website to see what else is available. So if you do need further support in terms of from STEM learning, have a look at the science learning partnerships all across the UK, and also STEM ambassadors. If you're not a STEM ambassador already, do think about signing up to that, or using STEM ambassadors when you have events in schools, because they are a network of STEM people who work in the STEM industry, and they can volunteer whenever you have a school event, or they can come to your school and do an assembly or run a careers workshop or kind of anything STEM related, and it's all for free, again, because they're volunteering through this scheme. There's lots and lots of different links, so I've just flagged a few of them. There's new resources about the moon on the ESA website. This was to do with the Apollo anniversaries last summer, but there's some really fantastic resources online at the moment at the ESA website. Keep an eye out for the space conferences and the other online courses, for example, exploring space courses that are to do with teaching primary science particularly, but there are secondary ones as well. And there are some more sort of non-curriculum related ones. So for example, how to run a space week during your STEM week at school, or how to organise a trip to CERN, or those kinds of things, which are really, really useful and have been written by people that have already done it. So useful stuff. A quick highlight of some challenges and competitions which are ongoing but affected, but will happen again. So I've already mentioned Mission X, but there's a few more as well. So Mission X normally runs from January to May. It's online, so I think it is still running, although of course actually doing the events is the issue at the moment. But all the resources are online. There's some new ones, they're fantastic. I'm going to show you a couple at the end. I'd normally do them with you if we were face to face, but I'll show you a couple at the end just to show you how easy they are to use and how you can drop them into lots and lots of different topics and classes. The Moon Camp Challenge is designing a moon camp, but using 3D modelling tools. So it's a programming session, and there's different levels depending on age and experience. You need to download some free tools like Tinkercad or Fusion 360, and it's a really nice way of getting coding and programming into school. A nice free session. And if you do it, again, you don't have to do it as part of a competition, but if you do, there are some great prizes, for example 3D printers, and these run every year. This session runs every year as well. So there are videos online as well, so Meet the Expert videos, resources. There's some blueprints for if you already have a 3D printer and you wanted to print something. There are some blueprints on that website as well. Then there's Climate Detectives, which is a sort of citizen science project to identify and investigate a local climate problem using images or by taking ground measurements. So this is again can be for younger or older students. All the information is on the website. The absolute best projects actually in normal times get an opportunity to tour ESERO, which is ESA's Centre for Earth Observation in Italy. So that's a really fantastic prize if you win that. But again, postponed. Sorry for the caveat every time. And then there's CanSat, which is for the older students, age range 14 to 19. Where small teams build a satellite the size of a soft drink can that will be launched up to 1 kilometre on a small rocket. There are 5 regional events every year: Cambridgeshire, Staffordshire, South Yorkshire and Ayrshire, and lots of resources on the website as well. The expression for interest for next year opens around now, although it might be postponed, and there are CPDs that come up towards the end of the year for next year's project. And then there's AstroPi, which again runs annually and is a coding competition with the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Some of the codes that the young people write might be uploaded to the International Space Station and run by astronauts actually in space, which is quite an impressive prize again. And then there's a couple of other things before we finish. There's resources with the James Webb Space Telescope. So the James Webb Space Telescope is supposed to be the next generation Hubble Space Telescope. It's again, the launch has been postponed, but there has been a huge public engagement drive around it. Most of the UK-based scientists are in Scotland, in Edinburgh and around. But there are lots of resources online that link in also to amateur astronomy societies and science museums and other organisations like that. So engagement resources about the James Webb include primary and secondary challenges, activity books, there's data projects, there's lots of video profiles, there's Destination Space 2 in science centres when they're open. There's resources called Astro Boost, which are all to do with the infrared camera on James Webb, and those are all completely free to download as well. And then there's these Deep Space Diaries, which were funded by Curve House, who did, they've done a lot of other of these space diaries. They did some Tim Peake ones as well. The physical copies, I think, are have been handed out, but there are free downloads available also in Welsh, and they're if you look at the girl in the top left in this picture, she's holding a deep space diary. It's sort of an interactive log of events and a book that young people can fill out, all to do with the James Webb Space Telescope. And then if you've got younger students, sort of preschool, nursery and primary, then We Share the Same Moon is also a really nice resource, all about storytelling around space. So starting with stories about the moon from all kinds of different nationalities, but there's all kinds of resources to do with stars and constellations and planets, and resources like building moon hats and doing phases of the moon and using cookies and that kind of thing. And Cassandra, who runs that, also does online storytelling that young people can listen to and is quite interactive as well. So that's a nice one too. Last but not least, I think, is the 1 million interactions scheme being run with ESERO UK and STEM Learning and the UK Space Agency. So 1 million interactions is a partnership between the UK Space Agency, ESERO, STEM and the Careers and Enterprise Company, which aims to inspire and encourage the next generation to continue studying STEM subjects into their careers, so space professionals. And the idea was, before this current situation, that the UK space sector would deliver 1 million interactions per year to young people. So 1 million face-to-face interactions. I suppose if you're talking to a class of 30, that's 30 interactions, and then you log it with the website. And I think that before all this happened, they were doing quite well, but you know, this has changed everything, hasn't it, really? So how to get involved in 1 million interactions? Well, ESERO UK is supporting STEM ambassadors to go into schools and STEM clubs and those kinds of things to deliver space-related inspiring sessions. And you can request a STEM ambassador to do that when schools are back in action with the proper safety precautions. But with that, there's also resources, guidance and support online. So you register either as a STEM ambassador or for a STEM ambassador on the STEM Learning website. You can also be a volunteer, and if you do volunteer to do that, you can you get a DBS or PBG check as well, and there's online training. So as a teacher, you can request someone to come and do an activity with you, or if you wanted to do it as a STEM ambassador, you could also do that as well. And all you have to do if you're a STEM ambassador is make sure that the 1 million interaction scheme is part of your profile on the website, and you just log whenever you do one of those interactions. There's also a handbook that's it wasn't ready for February, but it is ready now. So again, should be on the website at the moment. And that's how to run sessions, how to promote space careers. It's written for the space ambassadors, but I've seen it and it is really useful for anyone who's interested in running sessions and promoting space careers generally as well. So the online handbook is there. There will be a building bank of resources, including videos and training. There is online support, and when schools and youth groups are back into full flow, there will be a way of connecting STEM ambassadors to schools and vice versa. So it's a really good way of training. Now, I'm not going to do these physically, but I did want to just show you a couple of activities that I would normally do as part of a face-to-face training, and they're all taken from the Mission X scheme. So one of them is called Crew Assembly. So the background is that astronauts need to repair parts of the ISS. Excuse me. And that's better. So they do extravehicular activities or spacewalks, and when they do that, they have to wear their full space suits because they're outside of the ISS. And when they're doing these repairs, they have to handle objects, they have to assemble or maintain objects, so they must have good hand-eye coordination and dexterity and manipulation of tools and objects while wearing spacesuits that includes very big gloves. And so what I do in schools is I take Lego puzzles or puzzles into primary and secondary and get the students to complete a puzzle or build something using Lego, but they have to wear either oversized ski gloves or oven gloves. And it goes down a treat and the teachers get involved and it's a lot of fun. Those kind of cheeky ones that think that they can do it really easily, the next progression of this challenge is if you had like a big fish tank or a big tank where you could fill with water and put the Lego at the bottom, then they have to try and do it under pressure in the bottom of a fish tank. And this is kind of similar to astronaut training when they train using neutral buoyancy and scuba diving, and they have a massive mock-up of the International Space Station in the world's biggest swimming pool at NASA, and they scuba dive to practice these missions. Because neutral buoyancy is kind of similar to living in a zero gravity or a microgravity environment. So it's linking astronaut training to, and it's everyday objects as well. So oven gloves, ski gloves, Lego. I've got a 4-year-old, so I just borrow loads of his jigsaw puzzles. And when you're doing stuff like that with the older children, they get cocky and they're like, oh, that puzzle says age 3 to 5, I can do that. But the minute they do it with oven gloves on, it's quite difficult. And then there's another activity called Your Height in Space. So this is to do with the fact that gravity changes the spacing between your spine, and when you're in space, the gravity is not pulling down on the bits of your spine. I've lost my words today. And actually, because this gravity is not pulling down, you actually do grow in space. And you can use a very simple calculation to work out what your height would be in space. So I provide the young people with tape measures and calculators, and I've done this with really young kids and really old kids. And because it's broken down quite simply, the young ones love measuring themselves with tape measures and then pressing the buttons on calculators, and the older ones you can go into it a bit more in depth. But again, a very simple, easy activity that you can do with young people in the classroom, but to make it into sort of astronaut training and space, and obviously there's a bit of maths in there as well. Have a look at the Mission X website. The resources are extensive. There's loads of fun ones. There's things like making urine and testing urine and dehydration. There's lots of physical ones, sort of how long can you plank for, and lots of teamwork ones. So they're really, really fun, but they're relevant as well, and they do test all the sort of STEM subjects, and they're good fun to see. Talking, there's bone density, there's all kinds of stuff. Also, if you have school libraries, I do write books as well. I've got a couple of books out. The one on the left, Space on Earth, is for sort of 9 to 12-year-olds, and it's all about these space spin-off technologies. And the one on the right is all about space jobs and working in the space industry, how to be an astronaut. It's for younger years, but it's beautiful, and I think older students and parents probably would enjoy reading it too. If you get the paperback version of How to Be an Astronaut, it also comes with stickers and some pull out material, which is a bit of fun. So I will send this PowerPoint to you. There is a survey that's on there just to log what level of teacher you are, where you're from, that kind of thing. So do fill that out if you can. Don't forget to register your interest for any of the competitions that you're interested in. Have a look at all the resources on the ESERO site, but also on the RAS website, ras.ac.uk. And please feel free to stay in touch with me as long as you want to. I'm always there. I'm juggling childcare and work at the moment, and I also work part-time, so I don't always get to emails as quickly as I'd like to, but I will reply. And going forwards, you know, we can help you when schools are back and you want visits to the RAS, or you want one of us to come out to you, and all of that kind of thing as well. We have been also doing online preschool, primary and secondary classes. I should have put the link in here, but if you go to our website, you can see those. So if any students you know are homeschooling and want to log into a secondary level space lesson, then they can. Next Thursday, the 4th of June, we have a session with an actor playing Gene Cernan, the last man on the moon. So again, if young people want to log into that, it's all online obviously at the moment, but it seems to be working quite well. And we have kind of like public lectures and general, you know, things for general public. We have little resources about building things and arts and crafts and anything space related. We've probably done it or are thinking about doing it. So do keep in touch with us. We can work with you and create bespoke packages, or do whole school assemblies or whole school Zoom sessions of any age as well as additional teacher training, as long as it's space related. We're happy to help you. There's a couple of minutes left, so if you have any questions, I'll stop sharing so you can see me. But if you have any more questions or comments, please feel free to type them either into the chat or into the question. There is one here. So if you have any resources with regards to remote sensing data that we can use in the classroom, like image of algae bloom and chemistry related rather than just material chemistry. So at the moment, I do know the Royal Society of Chemistry are developing a lot more space related resources. So do have a look at the Royal Society of Chemistry websites. I know that they're doing this because I have a colleague in Wales who is an astronomer but is working for the Royal Society of Chemistry, and she's working on this at the moment. So have a look at those. There aren't any, I don't think there are any, for example, of algae bloom at the moment, but again, they might well be being created at the moment. What's the picture of Saturn behind me? I've got a couple. The one, sort of that one there, is when I did my PhD, I was using the Cassini spacecraft to look at Saturn and its rings and its moons, so I'm obsessed with Saturn. And this is a Cassini image of, it's basically an eclipse, so the sun is behind Saturn, so the planet is in darkness, in shadow, but it's highlighting the rings and the sort of the different nature of the ring. So the very edge ring is a water vapor ring, an ice ring created by the moon Enceladus. And in that picture, there is a little bit of a dot, and the dot is actually Earth as viewed from Saturn. So that's that one. There we go. Okay. Outreach projects for SEN pupils in primary and secondary. There aren't any on the ESERO website, as far as I know, but there are some on the RAS website, because I've been into SEN and special schools and done space sessions with them. So if you want to email me, I can send those to you. The other organisation we work very closely with for special schools and SEN pupils is the Lightyear Foundation. They do some incredible work for SEN students, so have a look at them. They have some space resources on there as well. So that's the Lightyear Foundation. There's a question about education department in an open prison. We are actually working with prisons at the moment. So we work with an organisation called the Bounce Back Foundation in London, and I've been into Brixton Prison and some other prisons in Kent. So we do have resources. We also have people that have worked in prisons that we can link you to. So if you want to email me, or if you, I don't think we have the resources on our website, but if you look at Bounce Back Foundation in London, or if you email me, then I can, we can work to do some more education in open prisons as well. So we've kind of been everywhere, and I've worked with all kinds of different people. I did some fantastic sessions last year with the Alzheimer's organisations and memory cafes, which was really eye-opening. You know, I'd go from a preschool to a dementia cafe and do the same activities, but with people with dementia in their 80s and 3-year-olds, and it was just fantastic. If there are any other questions, feel free. I will BCC everyone and send this PowerPoint to you. But if you are interested in any more, you know, working with us in any other way, I'll type my email address here again. But you, hopefully you've got it via Eventbrite, or if you send a message via Eventbrite, then that will come straight to me. I can send the link to the survey. I could probably do that now, actually, if I'm feeling clever. Let's do that now. I'll put that in the chat, but it is also in the PowerPoint. So have a look at that on the PowerPoint as well. Where's the chat gone? There. So there's the link to the survey as well, but it will be in the PowerPoint that I'll send you. And I've put my email address in there too. So if there are no other questions, then we will end today's session. I am aware that it's a massive overload of information, and you probably just want some time to compress all that into normal thought. I just wanted to finish by saying thank you again for attending. I know that at the moment things are crazy, and I really applaud all of you guys for the work that you're doing in schools with young people. I only teach once a week. You know, I'm not a full-time teacher, so I just, hats off to you guys. The students are so grateful. I know, I know they are. So thank you very much. If there are any other questions, please do email me. I'm always there. Like I said, I might not reply straight away, but I will reply eventually. And do keep in touch, because I'm really passionate about teaching and space, and I think you guys are.